Hello, thanks for tuning in again. And if you have only recently subscribed to me, well, much appreciated. Thank you very much. Yes, seeing is believing. Let's run with that. Seeing is believing. I see you, you see me. Okay, this is all about internal sight as opposed to these eyes and what they can see. You know, we see into things. If you can see, you embody your family, so you can see into that embodiment. We understand history, we understand all the different variables of history, the corruptions of histories, because we can see into them. Okay, we embody all the different spectrums of reality and we see into them. We see into corruption, we see into love, we see into pain and suffering. We can feel the suffering going on in Palestine right now at the time of, and we can feel into it. Okay, we can feel into the suffering because we can see into it. When somebody says to you, if you're explaining something to somebody and they say it doesn't square up, it doesn't figure, what they are essentially saying is they can't see what you are saying. They can't intuitively see into it. So yes, so seeing is believing. You know, we see, we see science is us looking into reality. And we're trying to embody the cell. What is the cell? Our understanding of the cell is growing and growing, and it's all by degree. And each degree gives us a broader embodiment of what it is, gives us more sight into it. We're starting to see further into it. Okay, we're starting to see further into it. We see into the structures of the body. Medicine is about seeing into the body, seeing the problem in the body, seeing what's making you suffer, and so on. When we're addressing the whole existential crisis, this existential hole that our species seems to be fast falling down into, what we are doing is seeing into something. We're seeing into the void, we're seeing into the troubles, we're seeing into the myriad variables that make people suffer in this world. We're trying to come to understanding with it all. We're trying to see our way forward. Okay, we're trying to see the light in the tunnel. We're trying to see our way out of the dark. So anyway, my point is, it's clear to say that we are a seeing species. Internal, I'm talking about internal sight, obviously. We see internally. So seeing is believing. Well, one question I like to ask myself, how big is this all-seeing eye? I mean, does it see everything? But how big is it? How big is this eye within all? We all wanted to, what is it to take measure of ourselves? Like, how are you measured as a person? Are you measured by your houses and cars and your diamond watch and your posh shoes? Is that a measure of you? Are you measured by your muscles or your beauty? What do you project as you? What do you project as the biggest measure of you? Well, I obviously, if you've been listening to my work, I project the systemic I as the biggest measure of what I am and what we are as a species, as a collective head. This I is a phenomenal tool within all. And most people don't really ask the question, well, how mighty is it? How colossal is this thing within our heads, okay? Well, one of the tools of sight is oscillation, okay? Embodiment is a condition of sight. We have to embody to see, and we have to oscillate. Our minds, it's like our mind sits on an oscillating axis, and it allows us to move around all the different tracks of reality so we can begin to embody them and come to understand them, come to see into them, and so on. Abstraction. Abstract is the window that lets us see into things. So yes, so that's my question. How big is this all-seeing eye? Because if we can truly get a grip of how big it is, well then this is what will give us measure as a species. And if it is in all as a gigantic measure, then we are all of this one gigantic measure. So, undermining each other and drawing lines that divide us up and all that is out the window forever once this is fully understood and we align by it. So yes, just let's take one look at the eye. Obviously, philosophy, for example, is born out of the fact that we can see internally, that we can see into things. And as I said, science, we can see into the cell, okay? We can see into the body. We're looking into the quantum field as I speak. We're looking in, we're trying to embody it, we're trying to come to understand it and hold a core by it. We're trying to hold a core by the correct combinational configurations because we're trying to see into the correct combinational configurations. Combinational configurations are also sort of bedfellows of internal sight, a priori bedfellows. Hopefully you can see that. You can see into the complexity of what I am trying to relay, hopefully. My point is, at least if you're listening, you're trying to see into it. And that says something about the eye in itself, that you're trying to see into complex flows of knowledge. So yes, So the eye can oscillate. The eye can oscillate. We can oscillate around our own evolution and think with it. We can move our minds back to the idea that we were once kind of an amoebic fish, and we moved forward along tracks over eons and became a chimp, and we moved forward along tracks over eon and became man. And the mind can see into that. And as we became man, as we moved through the eons, as we start to rise, as we start to elevate, we start to, create language frameworks that we could relay our intuitional internal sight around. Okay, we created alphabets. Look at the language we use today. Where did that come from? Along the long mile, it was brought into place, all by degrees of change, and once again, you can see into that. So you can oscillate around it. You can move your mind into all the historical contexts of that rise out of chimp into what we are on this day. Look, you can oscillate around war. You can move from pain and suffering into hope and love and glory. Okay, our mind, this is a phenomenal eye. This is a phenomenal eye that is synthesized with the entire ecology of all things, and it has the ability to systemize its way forward. Can you see into that? So I believe, like I said, just to go back to it, this is a true measure of what we are. Now, I also believe, if you've been listening to my work from the beginning, from the earlier streams, that this systemic eye is a measure of God within all. What I call embryonic God, a God coming back to life, and it is traveling through this conduit that we have incorrectly deemed to be man and woman, Homo sapien. Obviously, we are that in a kind of like we're ripples on a pond, that we're there, but we're not really there. There is only the pond. Anyway, another story. But I believe God is traveling through this construct, and God has the abstract eye. God is the all-seeing eye. This is an eye that can oscillate and take measure of huge, monumentally huge tracts of knowledge. Okay, and map it along inferential connections. There's something huge about that. We cannot deny that. Okay, this is tautologically, we're tautologically wrapped into this internal embodiment of what the eye is. So we can't get out of the bag. So yes, like I said, all my work, if you only tuned in, if you haven't listened to the earlier videos, my streams, my work is all about the systemic eye, because I believe this gives us true measure. I believe this gives us true transcendental, gigantic measure, and something, we should hold a cord by that. We're not a measure of our cars and our houses and our muscles and our beauty. We're not that. We're a measure of this eye. And this eye is, all-seeing and developing, at the time of. So anyway, hopefully you can see into that, that I'm trying to relay that. I'm trying to relay also the importance of understanding that, because I believe this is where we have to go, this is where we have to enter, this is what we have to start to see into if we want to get back on track. And it's one thing, people are losing sight of God, and that's part of the existential problem, and I can understand why too, because God has been distorted in myriad ways in such an ugly fashion. So God is kind of a dirty word. It's a dirty word when people hear it. There's a trigger, there's a intergenerational trauma triggers in the word God itself. Okay, people don't want to know anymore. But like taking an addiction away from a person, you have to sublimate it with another addiction. So while they slowly wean themselves off, say heroin, you sublimate it with morphine and they slowly wean themselves off. Well, we kind of have to slowly wean ourselves off of God, but that doesn't mean the God story is over. And so, to take away God, I believe we have to replace God. We take away the small God, we replace it with the bigger God. Well, the next version of God, the next bigger version of God. So I believe something that is systemic, that is built of a priori modes, and that allows us to systemize our way along the synthetic ecology and map ourselves into it, is worth noting and worth looking at and worth paying attention to and giving measure to. Okay, because if that is God inside all of us, it's time we start seeing it. Seeing is believing, as I've said. Anyway, I'll leave it on that note. Thanks for tuning in. I'd appreciate if you shared my work, and I'd like to get my work out there. I'd like to talk with the Jordan Petersons and so on, and the Russell Brands, and just get onto their platforms so I can promote my own platform, because I believe this work has merit, and this is where we are going as a species. Peace and love and logic. Thanks for tuning in.